So many movies in so little time. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you all. That's, by the way, that's some remarkable storytelling. I'll tell you a little bit more about it later. But on one hand, you have this woman who's very tragically and violently lost her son. And then you cut away to a law class where they're trying to put a value on human life in terms of a number. I mean, that's the job, right? So glad to have all of you here. I have some friends here as well. One of my hunting buddies. Yes, my gun's oiled up. And those of you who are online, it's good to have you here as well. If you happen to live in the Midwest, this is why we like fall. Last night I was sitting on my back screen porch, and I actually had to turn off the fan because I was cold. It was wonderful. So be that as it may, the movie is a Netflix movie. It's called Worth. Was made I think just a year ago, and it's a true story. The guy who's teaching, his name is Ken Feinberg, and he not only teaches law at a school, and he not only has his own firm, but he is also an expert on the scenarios that he just described. Okay, putting a number so that everyone they may not all be satisfied, they may not get what they want, but at least they can walk away from the table. All right? Well, it's September of 2001 in this story. Right? And the U.S. government is going to be calling on Mr. Feinberg because not only have the terrorists taken nearly 3,000 lives, but in the process, what they've done is they have destabilized our economy to the point where, I mean, if this were to spin out of control in terms of lawsuits, it could tank the entire economy. So very shortly after that, Congress instituted something called the 9/11 Victim Fund. And they called upon Mr. Feinberg, because he's an expert in these things, to administer the fund. And, I mean, how do you do that? How do you, what is a life worth? How do you calculate that? And that's where the movie goes. I mean, the people in the building, some of them were janitors. Some of them were CEOs. Some of them were married or else they were raising a family. Some of them were single. Some of them were pushing pencils and trading stocks. Some of them were firefighters and police. Some of them made tens of thousands. Some of them made millions in a year. How do you calculate that? I mean, that's the question that's being asked. What is a life worth? What is life worth? Well, it depends on who you ask, doesn't it? Right? So yesterday, I was with my daughters. We had a dad-daughter afternoon, and it ended up being a dad-daughter and Cal afternoon. But Cal, I wouldn't have had it any other way. Okay, good. And so the reason for the dad-daughter afternoon is that, as you know, my youngest is getting married in October, and I needed a really good suit, and I needed someone to help me pick the right thing. So they all went out, and Cal was very helpful with that, actually. We all went out, but before we did, my oldest daughter, who is a planner, Corrine, she said, you know, Dad, before we go, you should probably set an appointment because we don't know what we're going to run into in Des Moines. And so on Friday, I started calling around. First call I make is to a men's shop, and the guy answers, and I explained that I want a nice suit, good-looking suit, the wedding's coming up. And he said, well, our suits, I said, and I don't mind spending a little money, but I don't want to go like to gazillions of dollars. So the guy kind of coldly said, well, our suits start at $1,000. And of course, you know, I'm a product of Iowa Nice, and so I didn't laugh at him on the telephone. And along the way, he got the impression that I was actually interested in this. Okay? So all of a sudden, this guy comes from kind of cold to being like my best friend. And he's chatting me up, and he's telling me about the quality of the suit, and he wants to know my name, and where we're fun and when the wedding is and all this sort of thing. And I just wonder about what is my life worth? How does he calculate it? Well, probably the cabbage in my back pocket, right? That's what I would guess. A week or so earlier, that question got a little more serious for me. It was Thursday night, a week ago this last Thursday, and I was driving home from something, and I got this phone call. And it's my youngest who's getting married. And she is in a panic. She's absolutely terrified. She's by herself. She's in Iowa City. She was alone at home. Her fiance was away on something. I don't remember what. Doesn't matter. She took the dog for a walk, and she goes around the corner, and here's this car, and the car starts following her. And then the car goes by her, scoots kind of around the edge of the corner, and the guy gets out and looks at her and waits. Kari turns around and heads in the other direction. And there's some construction right there, so she ducks behind the construction. She thinks she's okay. Guess what? The guy goes around the corner, around the block, and there he is again. And he has stopped the car across the street from her house, and she runs to the house, and she locks every door she can. And then she calls me. And she is petrified, scared beyond words. She doesn't know how she's going to be able to stay in that house that night all by herself. I mean, it was, and I have to tell you, it was awful for her and awful for me. What is the value of life? How do you calculate that? Well, to the stalker, this person did not have a name. She was an object. She was a piece of meat. That's how he calculated it. Let's stop there and sing. Okay, so that thing to be toyed with is my daughter. It's my daughter. And I have to tell you, two things happened to me that night when I'm on the phone. First of all, I was completely helpless. I'm in Algona. She's in Iowa City, and the very first thing I said to her, I said, Kari, I'm on my way now. And I was literally ready to turn the car around, and she said, Dad, I don't need you 3 hours from now. I need you now. I mean, 3 hours from now, things could be very different. I was completely helpless to do anything. And it was the most, at least, and I mean, and she's scared for her life, and I was scared for her life too. And I couldn't do a thing, and I'd always been able to do those things for her. So that was the first thing I felt. The second thing, intense anger. I mean, that thing to be toyed with, and I don't know what his intentions was. Maybe he was just out for kicks and was just trying to rattle somebody. Maybe he had larger intents. At any rate, whatever it was, he was messing with her in a way that she shouldn't be messed with. She's not a statistic. She's not a thing. She is my daughter. She is the most precious thing in the world to me. All of my kids are. And you folks know what that's about because you've been there too. And you've been in a place, probably, where you couldn't do anything to help them. And that's where I was that night. And I will tell you that I would have done anything, and I still would do anything at all to see to it that she's safe. Let me read you something. But do not be afraid of those who threaten you, for the time is coming when everything that is covered will be revealed, and all that is secret will be made known to all. What I tell you now in the darkness, shout abroad when daylight comes. What I whisper in your ear, shout from the housetops for all to hear. Do not be afraid of those who want to harm your body. They cannot touch your soul. Fear only God, who can destroy both body and soul in hell. What is the price of 2 sparrows? 1 penny? But not a single sparrow can fall to the ground without your Father's knowing it. So don't be afraid. You are of more value to God than a whole flock of sparrows. What is life worth? How do you calculate that? Well, the world has all kinds of answers, don't they? All kinds of answers. And then there's God. Because God doesn't see you as a thing or a statistic or a number or an amount or anything else like that. God sees you the way I saw Kari, the way I see her, as his beloved child. And he tells us these things to remind us that all the other ways that the world puts value on us, they're all lies. They're not true. And God backs it up by saying, I love you so much that I would do anything to have you as my own and to keep you safe from harm. And then he backs it up further by sending Jesus into the world so that you might be saved from all the evil and all the darkness that surrounds you. There's a passage in 1 Peter chapter 1. It says that God redeems you, not with silver and gold. That's all we have to work with. But he redeems you with the precious blood of Christ and his innocent life. He gives it all to you to remind you who you really are and what the value of your life really is. Let's stop there. So I have a question for you, and it relates to just what we were talking about just a minute ago, and that is, what's your life worth? And how do you perceive that you're valued? How's that calculated? Is it about your size, your shape, or the size of your bank account? Or, and this is the one we all struggle with, is it about debt? Maybe you have offended someone, hurt someone. Or maybe you've been hurt. And for whatever reason, you can't let that go. And there sits the debt. And pretty soon, the person who owes is not seen as a person anymore. The only thing of value to them, about them, is the debt. Like I said, if nothing else, we've all experienced that. And so that's why we're here today. We're all here today because the world whispers lots of lies into our ears, and we buy into them like crazy. And God has come to say, no. Think about the sparrow. Not one falls to the ground. They're worthless to you, but not one falls to the ground. That's the value of a sparrow to us. 2 for a penny. Not one falls to the ground without the Father's notice. And then Jesus turns to you and says, and you, compared to a sparrow, oh my child, I'd do anything for you. So that's the first question I want to ask you. The second question is, how do you calculate the value of others? Each person you meet, how do you see them? Because I think it's our job to tell them and to help them understand what we already know. That however they see themselves, and however the world has told them that they're worth this, or they are that, or they're down here and the others are up here, however the world has done that, it's our job as members of the body of Christ, it's our job as people who are children of God to see everyone else in the same way and help them see the lie and help them understand that what the world tells them is not who or what they are. I think about that as I think about all of you, because I know each in our own way, we struggle with the question of how much is my life worth? Think about the kids who are going to walk in this building on Wednesday, and their parents, some of them for the very first time. We're going to have some of that on Wednesday. And you know, we're going to have a lot of fun. We always do. Every Wednesday night, it is a circus around here, right? It's crazy. I mean, the kids are running up and down the halls. Everybody's having a good time. They want to be here because of their friends, but there's something else more important going on. Because along the way, they can have fun pretty much any place. But along the way, there's something bigger afoot. And that is the message that no matter how the world sees you, little guy, and how the world sees you, parent who's not walked into a church in a long, long time, we have news for you. We have news about your value. We have news about your worth. And we have a way to calculate that you've maybe never experienced before. And for that, we give God thanks and praise. Amen.